Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for Gozyuger episode 18. Experimenting again with sometimes doing these with audio only, probably with my contemplative picture being put up every now and then. I'm trying to make it be a thing. But anyway, this is episode 18, our second full episode with Goju Polar, although we're back to the normal intro without him as the lead in that. And I don't know, it was an okay episode. I'll admit I was a little disappointed. There was a nice little kind of quote-unquote arc there with Taegajun's wedding stuff and Goju Polar, and I was hoping we would get at least 2 episodes that felt more serialized as we learned more about Goju Polar, and this felt like more back to normal, just with Goju Polar in there. I don't know why it reminded me of the arc in Atmon where they finally went to the digital world, and I thought we were going to get serialized stuff, and then it was one episode, and it was back to nonsense, and this is kind of what it was like. We did learn a little bit more about Goju Polar, kind of just expanding on what we had learned before, which was probably one of the best moments where he just talks about, after he won and did the wish, he was kind of trapped on the edge of time and space for 10,000 years until Goodburn woke him up and explaining why he wants to surpass Taegajun and kind of explaining why his rings are a different color, which is kind of fun because he's going to color them all his color to symbolize him kind of taking over Taegasword's role. If I mix them up, that might happen multiple times. But I thought that was kind of cool. And I do really like his characterization so far. He's got a bit of that I'm going to become the best #1 god bit. But you can tell there's some humanization there. And he's not a callous character. Clearly he cares about helping this kid out. He cares about helping the world out. You can see that in moments. He has a nice line about you got to appreciate every moment in life. So I do like that kind of mix of almost a slightly antagonistic presence for our other characters, but he's also a good guy character. I just kind of hope they keep it this way. We had the interesting dynamic of Boom Violet kind of being an outsider that lasted an episode and a half, and then he joined the team, only to basically be an outsider, but not against them. I just kind of like the idea of having a ranger that's on the side of good, but isn't necessarily kumbaya friendship braceleting with all the characters, because it adds an interesting, different dynamic. But that was probably the best thing about the episode for me, was just spending a little more time with his character, and learning more about his backstory. And then, of course, just seeing the suit in action, just such a top-tier suit. The fight scenes for both the Megazord and the Ranger suit were just great. So that was the best part. Everything else was all right. It was your classic Gojuger silliness where you set up this sort of field day thing. I was wondering, do they have those anymore, in schools in the U.S.? When I was in elementary school, we did have those field days where you played a bunch of different things. I remember the highlight usually being whatever water thing we got, we get a water slide or whatever. I don't know, that's not important. Anyway, it's the kid that lives at the restaurant, and it's funny because I meant to mention a few weeks ago that I honestly thought the mom and her kid that lived at the restaurant or owned it or whatever were going to be more prominent. Not like they were going to be the main characters or revealed to be a secret villain, but there's all kinds of person that lives at the cafe they hang out of characters that usually feel more prominent and lived in the series, and I feel like they haven't appeared since episode 1 or 3 or something like that. So I was like, oh yeah, you're in this, I forgot that. And so you have that storyline of them helping the kid, and they have a field day theme for the monster. And I do appreciate that the sort of game themes of the versus battles with the monsters give variety to this conflict and to the episodes instead of just the typical, formulaic, almost turn-based formula of Power Rangers and Sentai. But also just the silly antics are getting a little bit old. And I was really hoping to have a couple quote-unquote serious episodes following Goju Polar instead of feeling immediately back to basics. I mean, there were some fun moments in there, I guess. I really liked when Green used the Karame ring because I love Karamager, so it was cool to see that with one of the armors on, but I like that he used the drawing to create 2 other duplicates. That was kind of cool. It's kind of a moment like Zenkaiger where the legacy powers are used to sort of represent a facet of that series. So if you watched Karamager, you can appreciate why that was used, and I thought that was kind of a neat moment. But overall, everything else was just kind of your basic Gojuger filler. There was a little bit of stuff with Bouquet of her being yeah, I was right about not using all the rings, and that whole thing seemed kind of stupid. It seemed kind of like they just obviously did it because the plot called for it, which I guess is anything, but that just did seem kind of stupid. But I don't know. This episode was okay. I enjoyed the Goju Polar stuff, but I was a little disappointed by the back-to-basics approach. I wish there was a little bit more of a balance between kind of the silliness and stuff and getting a little bit more serious. Not oh my god, it's serious, be on HBO, but get me engaged in the story a little bit more. Because as is, I feel like I'm watching it and just going through the silliness to learn more about the mythology, because I'm legitimately interested in the story and mythology, but just the fact that most episodes just have a silly little gimmick with just breadcrumbs of awesomeness in terms of the action and story is kind of getting old. But what did you guys think of the episode? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.